Welcome back to the Andrew Finney Show, where we help you make sense of real estate. I'm your host, Andrew Finney with King Realty Group in Las Vegas, Nevada. Looking forward to having a wonderful time with you today. As we get going, there are a couple of quick house rules. Number one, you are in a safe place, so please be respectful and polite. And number two, there is no such thing as a stupid question. If it's on your mind, please feel free to ask it. As we move forward through the live stream, what we'll do is we'll go over the book of the week. We'll go over a question that really stood out to me that came in this past week. We'll go over the comments that came in over the past week. And of course, we'll be answering your questions real time, live today. So let's go ahead and get started with the book of the week. I wanted to share a really interesting book. Now, perhaps you've heard of Mel Robbins. She's a speaker and she's a wonderful author. Mel Robbins wrote a book that said, "Stop Saying You're Fine, the No BS Guide to Getting What You Want." And I mean, it's pretty captivating right out of the gate. Stop saying you're fine. When you really think about that, how many times does someone say, "Hey, how are you?" And you're like, "Oh, I'm fine. Oh, I'm okay," right? So she's talking about the pitfalls of doing that and how to make ourselves even better. Megorium, hi, happy Wednesday to you. Thank you so much for tuning in today and appreciate the emails back and forth with you this past week. So with Mel Robbins' book, this book is specifically geared towards about how to understand how your own brain works against you, because evolution has biased our mental gears against taking action, and what we can do and what some techniques are to outsmart ourselves. The reason that this comes up and the reason this becomes so powerful, it's so many people are like, "Hey, you know what? I can't do something. I can't do something, or I can do something." They have a limiting self-belief. And what the problem is with that is that if you don't think that you can do something, you're absolutely right, you can't. But if you believe in yourself that you can do it, then you're absolutely right, you can. So when we're talking about outsmarting ourselves, we have to understand our own decision-making process, the way that we think, the way that we make choices in our lives, and understanding what's important to us. Only by doing that and first looking inward can we help on the outward. So obviously, with the books that I typically share in the live stream, I'm sharing, from the library of over 400 books I have on Audible, about books that really appeal to me that I think that will benefit you as well, as somebody that is nothing more than just a student of humanity and trying to be the best person they can be on a daily basis. So I hope that book might be something that's powerful for you. I did put it in the show more description below if you want to just check it out and see if it's right for you. Awesome. It is available on Audible, Kindle, and in hard copy on Amazon. Okay, Matt Nelson, I saw that you tuned in a moment ago. I wanted to say thank you. I really appreciate you. Yes, the week is going really well. Had a very productive week this last week. Over the weekend, helped 3 families go under contract and making offers for another family this week, and meeting up with another YouTube client this Friday. So it's being busy. It's really, really busy, which is nice. Nadja Godroy says, "Are we in a seller's house market or a buyer house market?" Okay, so Nadja, I believe your question is, are we in a seller's market and a buyer's market? And that's a very good question, Nadja, and I appreciate you bringing that up. So we're actually in what's called a stabilized market. What a stabilized market is it means that we're still leaning a little bit towards the seller's market right now as we start leaning into the stabilization point that we're likely to see by the end of 2019. What that'll mean is there'll be roughly around the same amount of homes available for sale as buyers in the marketplace, and we should see some fair negotiations going on for open-minded sellers that want to sell their home, that actually have a need to sell their home, and buyers being able to negotiate some better terms on their contract. It's more of an even playing field than being a strong seller's market where the sellers are driving that bus. At the same time, there are unique properties in any marketplace, whether it's seller's market, a buyer's market, or a stabilized market, that if they're truly turnkey move-in ready homes and truly unique properties, they stand a very high chance of getting multiple offers. In a situation when you're in a multiple offer situation, regardless of the marketplace, then you need to adjust accordingly with your offer strategy and have that conversation with your trusted real estate advisor. Just make sure that you keep your eyes open, but overall, we're trending to a stabilization point, Nadja. And if you want to understand even more about what we're likely to see this year, go back to January 1st, 2019 video about the housing market predictions for this year. It's intense, and there's a lot of links in there that I put in there. All the same, I just wanted to get back to you on that. So thank you so much, Nadja, for asking that question. Brian Luong says, "Greetings from Minnesota, 6 to 8 inches of snow falling today. Today marks the snowiest February on record, with 30.4 inches fell this month, and more is coming this weekend." OMG, Brian. You know what? I'm glad that you brought that up, because, we just got a severe weather alert here in Las Vegas, Nevada. And I can tell you, snow is not common, but the other day, 2 nights ago, it was snowing. It didn't really stick, but it was snowing. But the severe weather alert that we just got today is telling us to expect some foul weather, stormy weather coming in this evening. And we're expecting actually in Las Vegas area, Las Vegas, Nevada, believe it or not, to have up to 3 inches of snow in the valley, not just on the mountaintop. Our mountain over here is called Mount Charleston, and we see snow in Mount Charleston frequently, but not in Las Vegas Valley. So it'll be pretty interesting to see what happens. So I feel for you. You're talking about 30.4 inches already, and I'm talking about maybe 3 inches on something that hasn't happened in Las Vegas since I moved here in 2012. So, hey, be safe out there, stay warm, and by all means, make sure that you're taking care of yourself and that you're stocked up on goods and non-perishables just to keep your family safe, drinking water, all that good stuff. So, Bryan, glad that you're here. Thank you for joining us, and please be safe. Matt Nelson, that's awesome. Glad to hear it. Thank you, Matt. Appreciate you. McGorium said, is that state-based or national? McGorium, that's a great question. So when we're talking about the market conditions, whenever I'm referring to it, obviously being YouTube, we're potentially global at any time, depending on who's watching. And about 87% of the subscribers on the channel actually are in the United States. The other 13% are around the world. That being said, whenever I'm talking about the market conditions, I'm specifically referring to the nation at large before you start going state specific. There are certainly some states that are experiencing some sellers markets, especially in the Midwest right now, and also in Washington State, some different pocket cities here and there that are experiencing sellers markets. And the reason being is simple. If you look at the national median income, right? And if you take a look at that about how much home one can afford based upon the national median income, and then you look to the states that have homes within that acceptable price range for that income level, where does that leave a lot of first-time home buyers, a lot of millennials, a lot of people buying a home right now? It leaves them going towards the Midwest, because the Midwest is experiencing a little bit of a renaissance, if you will, in terms of affordable housing, which is bringing in more people, which is bringing in an economic boom for certain cities in those locations. Same is true of the smaller cities in Washington State. And while we're seeing maybe more towards a buyer's market in certain states, whenever you think of like the coast, where we know real estate to be extremely expensive to begin with, it's tapering off and it's having to become more negotiable, because when the average sales price of a home starts cracking $1 million, who can afford it? Not many. So it has to start tapering off. So, but overall, nationwide, we're seeing a stabilization. Of course, your hyperlocal market may be different and likely is different. That's why I always recommend getting in touch with your trusted real estate advisor, asking them about your local market conditions, your local market trends, offer strategies if you're buying or listing strategies if you're selling, to understand what's going on in your local marketplace. Great question, McGowan. Thank you for that. Naja Goidoy says, thank you. Mommy Z Time says, hello, I finally made it. I enjoy all of your videos and get so angry at myself when I miss the live streams. I listen to lots of other YouTubers and you are indeed the most informative. Woohoo, I'm from Minnesota too. Mommy Z Time, thank you for being here and thank you for the kudos. You rock, you're awesome, and I certainly appreciate that and your support. And I'm glad that you were able to catch us on the live stream today. For reference, I normally always try to do live streams pretty religiously, 11 a.m. every Wednesday, 11 a.m. Pacific time to be exact there. And you listen to other YouTubers and mention that I'm the most informative. Hey, you know what? I have noticed some really good comments and some suggestions coming in from people lately, because we kind of glossed over the question of the week, and I can go back to that in a moment. And she's another YouTube subscriber, in fact, from Washington State. And the reason that I bring that up with informative videos and everything, you know, some people contact me or they say, like other real estate agents or lenders, and they say, hey, Andrew, don't you think you're like giving too much information? Don't you think like you're getting too deep into things like people are going to understand? Well, I always tell them the same thing. I said, look, my faith and my confidence in people is that they're smart and they want to make a well-informed decision. How are they supposed to make a well-informed decision unless you give them the opportunity to have the easy access to reliable, objective information that can guide them and benefit them in the home buying or home selling and even home owning process? So that's the purpose of what I do, where I make videos from like things that are very flashy, like first-time home buyers, you know, first-time home sellers, down to the minute details when you start looking at videos like latent defects versus material defects and start digging deep on what an earnest money deposit is and debt to income ratios and such. I believe in you. I believe in the people of our country and the people of our world, that we are always stronger together than we are not. And by virtue of being stronger together than we are not, we're already more alike. So why not do good? And why not try to be the reason someone smiles and be the reason someone believes in the good of humanity? Because the world, going back to today's book, Stop Saying You're Fine, and tricking your mindset, the world is what you see it. If you see positive, you'll see positive in the world. If you think negative, you're going to see negativity in the world. So why not inspire positivity to dispel negativity? That's my point of view. Why can't I be open and honest with you to help educate you and show you that not all trusted real estate advisors are, scum or anything? Because frankly, some people just think that trusted real estate advisors are nothing more than a sleazy car salesman, and it couldn't be further from the truth. I'm not the only trusted real estate advisor in the United States doing things to try to help you and help other people across the country. There's a lot of people that do blogs. There's some people that do Facebook. There's some people that do the Instagram thing. There's a lot of people that really care about the families they represent and take our job seriously while in trying to enjoy a wonderful time working with the families that we work with to make it a positive experience. So that being said, please keep an open mind to it. And my goal here is to simply help the entire industry, real estate industry at large, level shift into a more professional atmosphere, more professional environment, one that you can turn to any trusted real estate advisor across the country and know that they're not interested in the commission in as much as they're interested in taking care of you. The commissions, as I always tell other agents, will take care of themselves. If you focus on the family, you focus on the person that you're working with, everything else falls in line. Just focus on the person you're working with. That's what's important, because we're helping you buy or sell the place that you call home. And there is nothing more personal at the end of the day than the place that we lay down our head. So I approach it from the greatest amount of respect. I know that's a little bit long and probably a lot more than you thought I was going to go into, Mommy Z, but certain little things will sometimes get me on a tangent. And I'm really glad that you brought it up and super happy that you're here. Thank you. Okay, Bryan. Hang on. Nadja Godoy says, what state is in a buyer market? My house is in California and I'm trying to move out of California. So again, it's more than just a state, Nadja, and I'm glad that you brought that up. California certainly has certain areas that are leaning more towards the buyer market, but you have to understand, when we're talking about those areas that start leaning more towards the buyer's market in California, you're also looking at the average sales price of a home over $700,000, if not $1 million itself. So you have to start looking at all the different cities. It's one thing to share national numbers with you. It's another thing to share state numbers with you, and quite another to get down to the city that you're looking in and sharing those numbers and statistics with you. Even in one specific market, like let's take Las Vegas, Nevada, for example. We have roughly 52 zip codes throughout the Las Vegas Valley, comprised of 3 different cities from North Vegas, Las Vegas, and Henderson, okay? With 52 zip codes, not only do we have a city average of what's going on, we also have zip code activity that may be different than other zip codes. In one zip code, if you start stratifying what's going on in a specific subset, a price range in the market, if you will, one price point could be different than another price point. So that's why I share with you, a trusted real estate advisor can hook you up with that information in your local market. Now, when I share things on this stage where we're essentially opening up to a national audience or a global audience, if you will, I share the trends and the patterns and the conditions that we're seeing that are prevalent in the market moving forward to help people make a well-informed decision. That's why I always make the tie back to please have that conversation with your trusted real estate advisor and your local marketplace to ensure that everything is checking out and that you have the best information possible to make an educated decision as far as what you want to do. And it comes as no surprise to me that you're looking to move out of California. I've had clients right now that I'm working with moving out of California. I got people from Washington State, a gentleman and his wife flying in from New York this week. There's a lot of out-of-state activity moving to Vegas. So, and likewise to the Midwest for that matter. So you have a lot of out-of-state activity while people here in Vegas are staying here, which makes it even more interesting. But Las Vegas does have a growing economy at the moment, where we have a lot of different businesses coming in addition to the professional sports teams. So this gives people a whole different opportunity. That being said, it drives the prices up if the builders can't keep pace, and if the people that own the homes don't want to sell the homes as quickly as they otherwise used to. So it's something to watch for. Every marketplace is different. So Naja, really appreciate that and really appreciate you bringing that up. We could delve into that analytical rabbit hole quite a bit. So let's try to keep it simple, and please talk to a trusted real estate advisor near you to help make better sense of that situation. Brian says, question, can trim type color impact selling listing price? I have a bunch of 3.5-inch honey oak trim and I'm debating on how high of a priority item it is to replace it to keep it updated. I have watched your video on your high ROI improvements. So ROI, for anyone watching right now, if you're not familiar with it, is simply an acronym for return on investment. Brian is asking about updating type of color for the trim of a house, and sharing that he has 3.5-inch honey oak trim. So here's the thing, Brian, what I'd like you to do is look into your marketplace. And whenever we say look into your marketplace, specifically go into some of the new builders. Look at the listings that are online and look at how fast some of them are moving and what color was going on. Because even though the color of you would think the color wouldn't impact the value, but it could impact what's called sellability. If you have a home that looks better, it's more aesthetically pleasing to somebody, then they're likely to jump on it faster than if it's not. So you want to see what the color palette is in your city. And one of the best ways to watch that trend is by going to a new home builder and checking out the colors they're putting on the homes. That's a trend. And I would like to also play devil's advocate when we're talking about trends, that trends are what? A trend, meaning they go in style, they go out of style. There are certainly color palettes that remain strong and uniform despite any trend pattern. Like my own personal home, I do it in more like rustic traditional. Traditional always looks elegant. And my house is earth tone, which is in fitting with the landscape to Las Vegas, Nevada. Now, I recently have seen someone in Las Vegas, they painted their house like gray and blue. And I was like, hey, rock on if that's your thing, but it's not fitting to the environment. So when you look at the exterior color of a home, it should always be in keeping with the color palette of the environment, because it's either going to look right or it's going to stand out like a sore thumb. And it's something to think about, and it's something to consider. If you go for timeless colors and you go for timeless, like rustic traditional, like I was sharing with you a moment ago, French country would be another one of them. You want to look at that as timeless elegance, because it never goes out of style. It's one of those things, people either like it or they don't, but it never goes out of style because there's always somebody that does. Something to think about, something to consider. Okay, so Mommy Z Time, thank you. You're very welcome. And again, Mommy Z Time, thank you for being here. I'm saying Mommy Z Time. I guess I should be saying Mommy's Time, right? So thank you all the same. Okay, Naja Godroy says, wow, that was beautiful together, strong, positive, nice. Absolutely, Naja. Positive energy is what we get, and that's what I try to present to everybody on this channel. Hopefully it's a reason that makes you smile and you turn around and make someone else smile. Smiles are very contagious, just as positivity is. Okay, so then we have... Okay, so Bryan is now sharing with Naja Godroy that you can come to Minnesota, where a median sales price in the Twin Cities is about $258K. Just got to get over the snow and polar vortex. You're right about that. Whenever I was considering what state to move to, whenever I was deciding to move out of San Diego many years ago, I did the same thing. And I thought to myself, well, certain areas, Minnesota being one of them, very, very beautiful, but can I handle those harsh winters? And my answer is no. I prefer the heat than to have the cold. I prefer that dry heat over the cold more than anything. So I have much respect for the residents of cold states, because I don't know that I could do it. Let's put it that way. That was just a little too cold for me. Darren Carter, thank you for being here. Darren says, hey, Andrew, don't know if you're touched up on the subject of filing federal taxes and home ownership. Okay, so filing your federal taxes, the best thing that you can do is obviously get with your tax advisor, a tax accountant, to review your options with you. There are some interesting things that are afoot with the home ownership. I did make a video about that. I am hesitant, to be honest with you, just to really say anything about it until the dust is settled and everybody gets through the tax season, and then I might make an update for it or something going into next year to give people a better idea. I generally, again, would like you to just reach out to a tax advisor, a tax accountant, so that you can get the best scoop possible. Since I'm just a real estate agent, just a humble real estate agent, right? I don't want to give you misinformation. I prefer to get you the best information, if that's okay. Okay, Naja, thank you, Brian Luong. Okay. Megorium. So I'm finally house hunting. One house on Zillow is for sale by owner, but there are no photos and it says there's an unfinished basement. Is that a tactic to get a buyer through the door? So Megorium, I'm glad that you're out house hunting. I saw your update the other day on the comments. Been obviously, from earlier in this live stream I was sharing that it's been a little bit busy, so I haven't had a chance to respond to the comments like I'd like to. But I did notice that you shared with me that you got your pre-approval. Congratulations on that, by the way. And when you're looking at it for sale by owner, you definitely want to ensure that you do have your trusted real estate advisor, whether you're looking at a new build, a resale, or for sale by owner. You need someone protecting your best interest and guiding you through the process. When you're talking about a for sale by owner, what that means is they're essentially listing their home themselves, they're putting it up, and they may or may not be familiar with the real estate process. And it's always important to ensure that you have the right kind of agent, a top agent in your marketplace, helping you that guides you through every step of the way to make sure everything's 100% legit. Sometimes, common things that have happened with for sale by owners that sometimes is that they're not getting full disclosure over to the buyer. Buyer later comes back and wants to sue or do something like that because they feel that they should have known, and they should have known because in a lot of states it is a required thing to have what's called a seller's real property disclosure. Not every state has it, but that doesn't mean that you can't ask questions specific to what your curiosities are. When you're talking about having no photos in an unfinished basement, is that a tactic to get buyers to the door? I would sure think not. By not having any photos, they're not doing themselves any service. When I list property here in Las Vegas, Nevada, then help people sell their home, I will always have, number one, a professional photographer go into the house to shoot it. I always have at least 35 high definition photos ready to go for the market. And obviously what I put in the MLS will be distributed across the big aggregate sites like Zillow, Realtor, Redfin, what have you, in addition to other real estate websites and real estate agent websites. That being said, how do you attract somebody to a property with no pictures? I always make the analogy to a seller that when we're putting a house on the market, we need to declutter, we need to depersonalize, and we need to make it look good, smell good, and be good, because what essentially we're doing is playing Match.com with a home buyer. We're trying to get the home ready to go so that it's the apple of someone's eye and they want to marry a 30-year mortgage. And here's the linchpin that people really should think about. The average right now for an American marriage across the board is between 10 and 11 years married before they get a divorce. But the average home loan is 30 years in duration for a fixed rate mortgage. So if we're asking someone to marry the house, it becomes extremely important because you're marrying that mortgage for up to 30 years. Then it becomes very, very important to do our job right. How can we do our job right unless we're not putting our best foot forward? We have to put our best foot forward. So is that a tactic, McGuire, for getting a buyer through the door? I sure don't think so. I think it's a very flawed thing that they're doing, and they're not doing themselves a disservice. Or excuse me, they're not doing themselves a service, they're doing themselves a disservice. Just my professional opinion on the matter. Brian Luong says, Naja Goodroy says, here are the market insights for Minneapolis, St. Paul. Thank you for sharing that. Adina Realty over there. Okay. Brian, are you an agent and by chance in St. Paul, or is that your trusted real estate advisor over there? Because for some reason that name is pinging off of my mental registry for Adina Realty, and I'm not sure why. At the same time, cool. Glad that you shared a hyperlocal link for the Help Naja out right there. Naja Godway says, the taxes this year were difficult. I personally didn't get the same of last year, and I didn't understand. Do you know what this was about? I know that it has something to do with the house tax cuts. So Naja, that's a really good point, and I'm glad that you brought it up. Going back to that video that I released in January of this year about the housing market predictions, I did share what the Republican-held Congress and Senate and President Trump passed this last summer, which they were calling, and I don't want to get it completely wrong, but essentially like a tax cuts and job growth or economic growth or something like that. In reality, it did not benefit most of us across the country. In reality, it did benefit like extremely wealthy people to begin with and cut back on a corporate tax rate. And now Americans are figuring it out as they go and file their taxes, and people that sometimes were getting returns are getting less or no returns. And those of us that have traditionally had to pay taxes to begin with are now paying even more of our hard-earned money towards taxes, while the richest people in the country, billionaires and such, are paying far less. It has everything to do with that tax policy that was being touted as a saving grace of the middle America being the middle class of the United States. In reality, it was not your friend, and many people across the country are now starting to find that out. So it was a big change, and it has dire consequences. So what I would ask you to do, without getting political or anything, I'd definitely try to be as objective and even keel as possible without getting into politics. But what I'd ask you each to do, and anyone watching this live stream or after the fact, and to share with your family and friends, is to vote your conscience. Vote your conscience. So that means do your research. The same way that I always challenge you to research an agent and Google an agent, Google a loan officer, and ask questions to become a well-informed person to make sense of what you're doing in real estate. I'm going to ask you to do the same thing when it comes time to vote. Make sure that you vote your conscience, make sure that you educated yourself on the matters and didn't get caught up in the whirlwind of whatever news cycles are saying or what this person said, that person said. Don't pay attention to the rhetoric, pay attention to the facts. And the only way you can get the facts is if you're cross-referencing objectively different points of view, okay? So then you can make the decision that's right for you for who to vote for. Got to pay attention to these matters, and I really hope the millennials and Gen Z come out and force whenever it comes time to vote, because they weren't there this last time in as strong as capacity as they could have been. And I wonder what would have been different. All the same, something to think about, something to consider. Please vote your conscience at the end of the day. Okay. You're so funny, Brian. Okay, so Brian says, we were talking about hot and cold, and Brian says you can only take off so many layers before you're naked. In wintry state, you can always put on more layers. That's really funny, Brian. I like your sense of humor. I got to go there with you because that's funny. So thank you for sharing that with us. Kobe, thank you for being here. Kobe says, if you make an offer on a house, can you place 2 to 3 offers on the same time on that one house? So Kobe, if I'm understanding, and please, if you're still here with us, clarify in case if I'm misinterpreting something from your question. The way that your question sounds to me is that if you're making an offer on the house, you're also asking if you can make 2 to 3 more offers on the house with different options. No, you wouldn't do that. That would defeat yourself, because where's the negotiation? That's the purpose of the offer. I want you to think about this, Kobe. When a seller puts their home on the market, they're expressing their thought process. If we look at a negotiation as nothing more than a conversation, which realistically it is. It's just written down and expressed in writing is all it is. A seller is putting forth their thought about what they'd like to get for their home when they put it on the market. A buyer is expressing their thought of what they would like to purchase that home for, with any specific terms that they may be asking for inside of that contract by making the offer. If you already have one negotiation, why would you start going back and putting 2 to 3 more offers together? Because that's now the negotiation process. The seller has the opportunity to reject, accept, or counter your offer when you get into contract. Or when you're negotiating, rather. And the buyer, by the same token, if the seller sends back a counter offer, has the same opportunity to reject, accept, or counter, right? So that's where, when you're talking about the options in an offer, that's where you would be coming into play there. So that's a real estate negotiation occurring. There's no need to make 2 to 3 offers on the same house, if I'm reading your question correctly, because the key here was when you said offers, 2 to 3 offers at the same time on one house. So I want to make sure that I'm clear on that and make sure that I'm understanding that and sharing the correct answer with you. If your thought was a little bit different than that, then please let me know. Brian, I see that you and Nadia are going back and forth. Just want to say, hey, love it. And glad that you guys are engaging there. Alejandro Leon, thank you so much for being here today. Alejandro says, hey, Andrew, keep doing what you do. My fiance and I have watched your videos, listened to your advice, and followed your suggestions. We went into escrow on February 2nd, and we're getting the keys tomorrow. Congratulations, Alejandro. Super stoked and super happy for you and your family. I'm just stoked that you and your fiance are going to be able to get your first place and that you get the keys tomorrow. I'm wishing you and yours and you and your fiance, and if you guys are planning any little babies, who knows, these things happen, right? Wishing you guys much love in your new place as you fill the walls with love and make it your own. Thank you so much for sharing that update with us. It's always super exciting to find out how the videos have helped you, and I'm glad that they guided you through the process. Thank you so much for reaching out, Alejandro, and please keep watching. And on just for reference, on Fridays I go in with the home owning advice. That's probably the best place to keep up on how to own your home, and when the time is right for you, years and years in the future or whatnot, then obviously I have a home selling playlist that comes out on Thursdays that you might be interested in at that time. But all the same, super happy for you. Congratulations. Megorium, lots left. The only thing that looks good is that great is a great neighborhood, but he just seems shady about the way he listed it. Oh, okay, I see. So now you're going back to the for sale by owner situation where you're saying the only thing that looks good about that house, that for sale by owner house, is that it's in a great neighborhood, but it just seems shady how he listed it. Lots of laughs. Well, yeah, it's for sale by owner. And it's just a situation. Not every for sale by owner situation is a bad situation, just to be completely clear. Got to play devil's advocate with this. I have spoken with people that would oftentimes prefer to list with an agent, but maybe the situation doesn't make sense, meaning that maybe they bought the house 6 months, 12 months ago, and due to a major life circumstance change in their situation, they have to sell. And if that's the case, now they're at a negative going to the closing table, and they're trying to avoid that. That is a common situation that does happen sometimes. So that being said, not every for sale by owner is exactly a bad thing, but at the end of the day, definitely need to have a real estate agent involved in the situation, or at a minimum a real estate attorney, to ensure that you are comfortable and confident every step of the way and understand what you're agreeing to and your obligations underneath said agreement. Tish R, congrats Alejandro, most def. And Tish, thank you for being here, by the way. Matt Nelson, congrats, that's amazing. Matt, you were just there not long ago, my friend, and I still love seeing your name here, and I always love when you have the ability to join us. Hope you're enjoying a great lunchtime. I know that's probably what you're doing right now, so thank you for that. Kobe, we are thinking the same thing. I understand what you're saying. Thank you, Kobe. Absolutely, you're welcome. Thank you for being here. Brian, with the help of your videos and my research, my mortgage guy and realtor asked hang on, I'm sorry, it moved too quick on me. Let me repeat that. Brian says, with the help of your videos and my research, my mortgage guy and realtor asked if I did most of the work for them. They said I was very well educated on the finance side and figured out my own pre-approval. Hey, that's awesome. That's what these videos are designed to do. So it's always like a gut check for another trusted real estate advisor when you're getting hit up with the right questions. I love it. You know, whenever YouTube people reach out to me that are local here, that want me to assist them in buying or selling a house, I absolutely love it, because they're asking all the right questions. Depending on how many videos they watch, they're asking all the right questions. It's a very productive conversation, and it's a very good conversation helping them become successful. So by the same time, when you're talking about that with the finance, it's like that gut check, because now, you know, loan officers and don't really expect for people to come in with some of these harder hitting questions or questions being asked about the process. But because you've educated yourself, that's the difference. That's going back to that whole thing that I say so often in videos about fear. Fear is a false evidence appearing real, and the best way to replace fear is with knowledge. Because we all know with knowledge comes power. And when you have power, that provides comfort and confidence in your decision-making process moving forward. It alleviates the anxiety. It takes away the fear, because you first took the step to become educated. So that's a testament to you, Brian. I'm glad that my videos were one of your resources as you were learning how to do that process. And I just want to say thank you for that. But you deserve a lot of credit for taking it upon yourself to become educated in the process. And for that, I thank you and give you kudos. Okay. Matt Nelson, could an elderly person who doesn't know how to upload, could be an elderly, okay. So Matt's talking about the for sale by owner, and yeah, sure, that is certainly a thing that could have happened, yeah. Brian, and he simply, now Brian's back to the lender, simply pulled a credit report and compared it against my Excel spreadsheet and said, you're right on, and he wrote the pre-approval letter on the spot, then forwarded my spreadsheet to his colleagues in a humble brag. Hey, awesome. Well, hey, we're going to give you kudos. You got every right to brag on that. Good job on that. Matt Nelson, thank you, sir. Yes, I was. Thank you, Matt. I'm still working. I'm multitasking. Lots of laugh. Must got those earbuds in and your phone tucked away or something, right? Listening to it as opposed to watching it, because I know you said a lot of time you listen. And you've told me that I should do a podcast, and there's been other people telling me I should do a podcast. All in good time, my friends. All in good time. Maisie Matt. Wow. Okay. You got me on this one. My apologies. Mazzy Maz, New York City. Are home surveys important and worth the money? It depends on the situation, Mazzy Maz. I really appreciate you bringing that up. I'm definitely not going to tell you that it's not worth it. You need to have that conversation with your trusted real estate advisor. And then being in New York City alone, you also might want to ask your real estate attorney that question as well and see what they think is the right thing for you to do. It's probably akin to like when I always advise people to have a home inspection. It's up to them, of course, whether they do it or not. I just highly recommend and advise getting it done. And with a survey, it would lay to rest any concerns or disputes over what's going on with the situation, depending on what type of survey you're doing. All the same, the more information you can get, the better. Talk to your trusted real estate advisor you're working with, chat it over with your real estate attorney, make the decision that's right for you, and make sure that you continue to do your research. Great question. Thank you for bringing it up. Bryan says, if I ever buy a house in the LV area, I'll have to hit you up though. Hey, definitely hit me up. We'll work out and we'll make things happen for you. If you're still in real estate finance, if I'm still in the real estate finance business, well, right now, not planning on going anywhere. Definitely life can take a spin here or there, but at the same time, at the pace that I've created these videos and continue to release these videos, my guess is these videos will benefit people for many, many years to come, decades to come. For as long as YouTube is around, these videos will be around. So, and a lot of what I share, if you really look at the fundamentals and the principles, won't change despite what year it is. So that being said, you never know. Okay, well, at least we got about 35 minutes in before we dropped connection for whatever purpose in life. So thank you for bearing with me as I was trying to resume the feed. Really appreciate it. So anyways, Megorium, that's true, Matt. My curiosity has got me texting my agent right now about seeing this house. I have to remind myself to not make immediate assumptions. That's absolutely right. Remember that anytime we make assumptions, it does a what? First of all, make an assumption, we're pointing the finger, but when we point the finger, we have these three right here pointing back at us, right? The other way that people always say about assumptions, when we make an assumptions, we make an ass of ourselves, an ASS, right? An ass of ourselves. So it's best not to make assumptions, and it's very important to keep a level head as much as possible. And that's why we then turn into what I like to call hashtag JTAB, which is just take a breath. If we just take a breath, we're able to reassess, make a well-informed decision. So as opposed to acting on an assumption, it's always important to see things from more than one perspective. And a real estate negotiation recently, I can't go into the details of it since it is a recent real estate negotiation. All at the same time, there was something that an agent had mentioned to me, and I was glad that they did. Initially, I was a little bit flustered by the question, and then I thought, well, the agent should know. But at the same time, always try to work out with people and figure things out. But when the agent and I got on the phone finally, tried to reach the agent finally called me back, and we started talking, I then understood what the concern was. And I had shared with the agent that I really appreciated them bringing that up. It shows how powerful perspective is, because it's something I had not considered from that thought process before. And now knowing someone thought it that way, it sheds a little bit of enlightenment in my thought process to be even more cognizant of the different ways information is interpreted. Even whenever it seems cut and dry, it's not always cut and dry. And perhaps that's one of the reasons, is to try to give people the most objective information, try not to repeat myself too many times unless it's an extremely important part of the video, all at the same time, to present it in different ways to help people better learn however is best for them to learn. Anyways, it's a really good point. Glad that you brought that up about perspective and assumptions. So Megorian, that's awesome. Thank you. JJ, thank you for being here. JJ says, hi, Andrew. I just got my loan estimate and the program disclosures from the bank. On the bottom says service you cannot shop for. There we go. Service I can shop for. The Alta 8.1 endorsement, Alta 9 endorsement, title attorney fee, escrow fee, lender's fees, insurance. Should I go ahead and shop the thing I can shop for? That's your call, JJ. If you think that you want to shop that, do your thing. All at the same, yes, there's definitely some things that can be shopped for and some things that can't be shopped for. So if you want to shop. There's no harm in that if that's what you want to do. Now, if you feel comfortable and confident that your lender can perform and your lender is doing you well, then stick with the lender that you feel most comfortable with. Just like on the real estate side of things, where a skill set is a skill set and some have better skills than others, right? And you also have the comfort level of working with an individual that can perform. Just because someone promises you a lower rate, we see them all the time in online adverts. We see them on the television. We hear them on the radio all the time, just trying to beat this thing into our head about how low of a rate that they can give you. But all too often, people don't look at that little asterisk when it's saying, oh, by the way, this is assuming you had an 800 plus credit score, you're making 20% down payment on a conventional loan product, and that you bought 2 points, right? So it's important to understand that when we talk about rates. At the same time, if you want to shop for the different aspects, JJ, I'd encourage you to do what feels right to you and to follow your instinct and intuition as far as making what a well-informed decision means to you. Bryan says, by the way, thank you for your military service. I have no issue paying my federal income tax to have all things you have sacrificed for it. Thank you so much, Bryan. Really appreciate you recognizing the military service. And by the way, anyone watching now during the live stream or after the fact, I also appreciate your military service and appreciate the people that truly do respect the military, active duty, and veterans, retired, past, present, and future. So thank you so much, Bryan. Really appreciate you there. Joseph, hey, Joseph Farrer, thank you for being here. Joseph says, is there a good rule of thumb when determining what your comfort level is on a monthly mortgage payment? Absolutely there is, Joseph, and I'm glad that you brought that up. That's fantastic. So, Joseph, when we're looking at a good rule of thumb when determining what your comfort level is on your monthly mortgage payment, that's always something that comes into your own situation and what's most important to you, right? And the reason that I preface it that way is because I've made videos about knowing how much home you can afford and what a comfort level is. And I've got some videos coming out about the differences between housing affordability and true personal affordability. There is a difference. So if your maximum loan pre-approval is for $500,000, but that bad boy comes with like maybe, let's say, $3,200 a month monthly mortgage, are you realistically comfortable with that? Now, only an individual can answer that question, whether they are or they're not. But when you're talking about a good rule of thumb, this is the way that what we always have to put in context and remember is that when a lender issues a loan pre-approval letter, they're taking into account your gross income, which means they have not taken into account the money that you have to pay going forward into your taxes, into your living situation. They're only taking into account the proposed monthly mortgage amount and your anything that you owe creditors, like your credit cards, student loans, what have you. Now, I am seeing you bringing up like back end and front end ratios right there. Yes, I've actually made a video about that, going back to the more minute things in real estate and in the lending world, like debt to income ratios is what you're describing there. So what I would ask you to do is to take a close look at your situation and by a factor percentage, add back to whatever your back end debt to income ratio is, however much your tax liability is. Then ask yourself with that remaining portion, let's say that you have, let's do easy math. Then ask yourself with that remaining portion, let's say that you have, let's do easy math here. Let's say that you have 30% back end debt to income ratio. Let's say that your federal tax liability is 20%. That means half of your overall income is going towards your housing and also towards your debts and to Uncle Sam, right? Well, can you live on the remaining 50% of your and to Uncle Sam, right? Well, can you live on the remaining 50% of your gross income? Chances are probably yes. Now, what happens if you are at a 50% back end debt to income ratio and you have 20% going to Uncle Sam? Now you're at 70% of your gross income going towards your housing, going towards your debts, going towards Uncle Sam, right? That leaves you with 30% of your gross income for your living expenses and such. Can you realistically live, save, and plan for retirement on that amount of money? Only you can ultimately answer that question. So when you're asking about a good rule of thumb, I normally get nervous when I see people's debt to income ratios going over 45%. It depends on what's going on in their life. Are they getting ready to get a promotion? Are they planning on, or are they coming up on a pay raise or what have you, right? Those kind of things, if they are, awesome. You know you're gonna get more money, it's good. But a lot of people don't have enough money in the bank for an emergency. So then where I get concerned is what happens if somebody gets sick? What happens if somebody was out of work for a while? what would happen to them and what would happen to their home? I guess that's where like my conscience always kicks in and thinks about this stuff, trying to put myself in someone else's shoes, having gone through a bankruptcy before in my own past, and having had to dig myself out of nasty little holes that I had to dig out of in times past. I know what it's like, and I wouldn't wish it off on anyone. Not even my worst enemy would I wish those type of situations off on. So when you ask about a good rule of thumb, it's whatever the number is that you are realistically comfortable with, that's also in balance with the realism of the marketplace itself. I say the realism of the marketplace because some people say, oh, I'm comfortable with $1,000 a month, but maybe there's no homes available at $1,000 a month, then we have a problem. So you have to realistically assess how much money you're comfortable with paying, and also realistically assess how much money it costs for you to live when you consider things like your utilities, things like your groceries, things like savings for the future, savings for entertainment purposes, your entertainment budget, what have you. You got to consider that. And if you can comfortably live on whatever that amount is, that's how you reverse engineer what your true comfort level is for your housing affordability versus a maximum loan pre-approval amount. I hope that makes sense, because I could get on that all day long and just run a tangent on that. But it is really, really important. And Joseph, I am like really, really happy that you brought that up. Thank you. Okay. Joseph Fair, where were we? There we go. John Y., thank you for being here. John says, hi, Andrew. When I close on the house, do I need to notify the county assessor's office to get my name on the tax bill, or does the mortgage and title company do that for me? Mortgage and title company will take care of that for you. A great question, though, John. Thank you. Brian says, at Joseph Fair, rule of thumb is no more than 5 times your gross annual household income. 3 times is where it's most comfortable. So that is a rule of thumb. One thing, and I shared this in last week's live stream, I've shared it here and there in different videos, is, you know, there is an old school thought on the matter that you should not exceed 25% of your gross income towards your overall housing needs. Now, this is old school. And the reason I say this is old school is that with old school, they didn't have what? They didn't have a cell phone. And nor was a cell phone exactly needed back then. But now somehow cell phones have worked their way into our lives to a point where we have to have one. Otherwise, we can't do our job. We can't do what we need to do. And yet that bad boy cost, I don't know about your bill, but cost, you know, $250, $300 a month. So with that, that's an expense. And when you start looking at student loan debts, you know, in the 2019 predictions video, I showed the very real fact that the current, as of last year, the student loan debt was something like an estimated 1.4 trillion. So when you start taking a look at all of these variables and factors about one's money and where it goes, it becomes increasingly concerning. It easily puts a lot of families over 25%. Now, while I respect the thought of Mr. Dave Ramsey, I love a lot of his videos and I love a lot of what he says, I do have a little bit of a disagreement in practice as I see debt to income ratios play out, because the opportunity cost of time to try to save up for a 20% down payment, or to get your finances just right, to get your debt to income ratio around a 25% of your income. If you look at the overall opportunity cost and you start calculating, or you start considering what mortgage interest rates rises can do, and you start considering what the average historical rate of home appreciation is at 3%, well, do the math on that for 10 to 15 years, or how long it'll take you to save up for 20%, and do the math on that, how long it'll take you to pay down your debts to get the 25%. By the time you just did that, you're in the hole even further than you were before, because if you would have bit the bullet, so to speak, and bit down on what you were truly comfortable with buying at the time, that made sense to you, that you were comfortable with doing, then over time you would have been pocketing that equity, which would have been like a retirement account in and of itself, or a savings account in and of itself, so long as one does not touch their home equity, which anyone that has watched me for any length of time knows that I'm not a proponent of touching home equity at all. Unless it's a really dire emergency. A dire emergency does not constitute in going buying a new car or a new yacht. A dire emergency is like a last-ditch effort for survival. Not playing with home equity is a good idea. Playing with it, you're playing with fire and you get burned, and that's part of what led into 2008. Now, for those kind of topics, I could get going and going and going and going, and perhaps that's why Matt and some others have told me that perhaps I should have a podcast. If I was going to have a podcast, I'd love to be able to have callers calling and asking these questions as well, because there are certainly some topics I could get onto a diatribe very quickly, and you guys are hitting on some of them because it's just that important. So thank you. And before I continue continue on that tangent, let me get off of it. But thank you so much for bringing that up. It is critically important, and I'm glad you're asking the questions. I'm glad you guys are helping each other in the chat section here, and I'm glad that you're considering it now. Very, very smart. Very, very good on you. Matt says, hashtag JTAB. I like that. Yeah, I know, right? Maybe it's something that we can actually do a t-shirt on or something like that, since I can't do it on fear. I did look into it. I won't go into the reason why I can't, because then somebody might think I'm defaming someone else by making a factual statement. So we won't go there. At the same time, hashtag JTAB, don't know if it's taken or not. So maybe we could do that. But yeah, just take a breath. It's that easy. Love it. When things get real, things get deep, take a breath. Okay, Brian, Joseph Ferrer, it's also important to factor in property tax and homeowners insurance. Absolutely. When you consider your monthly mortgage, you should always be including the principal, interest, property tax, and homeowners insurance. Absolutely. Joseph says, thanks, Brian. Brian gives thumbs up. Joseph says, hang on a second here. Brian says you can go higher. Okay, it looks like you guys were going back and forth there. That's really cool. Thank you for that. JJ says, thank you. Joseph Fear says, fear, false evidence appearing real. Absolutely. Brian says, FHA, DTI ratios are 31-43. Okay. Darren Carter, we talked about this issue before. Andrew, my wife and I were approved for $245,000, and I wanted to pay no more than $1,300 a month, which includes PMI and homeowners insurance. So yes, it's absolutely, and we did talk about this before, and I'm glad that it worked out for you, Darren, because not so long ago you were getting the keys to your new home as well. So congratulations again on that, and I'm glad that you're sharing your experiences now as a first-time home buyer with everybody to share your thoughts on the matter as well. Thank you. Matt Nelson, no joking, I was going to mention Dave Ramsey when you brought up the student loans, laughing my ass off. So Matt, hey, that's awesome. I guess great minds think alike, right? But it's one of those things. I think Dave does a wonderful job with a lot of his stuff, and I'm right there behind him, just like a cheerleader with pom-poms in his box or corner or whatever you want to call it, cheering him on. But when it comes to real estate, not so much sometimes. And it's just because I deal with the realities of having the conversations with first-time home buyers and buyers in general, and I'm listening to their overall situation and what's important to them and where their goals are and where their passions are. And I think that if you try to hit these levels, it's just unrealistic. And the one thing that is not taken into concern is the opportunity cost of time and the time value of money. Those two principles is the only flaw that I see in an otherwise very prudent strategy that he would have laid out. Now, it is definitely in my thought, and I am working on it to be able to do a whiteboard explainer on breaking down the math and breaking it down in detail, because it just is that important to understand. So when I say working on it, it's like I got the camera and everything. Now I'm just trying to figure out how to get rid of the damn glare on the white screen. Anyways, different story. Okay. Darren says, and if you remember, Andrew, my wife was removed from a loan and I can pay the mortgage myself, and so can she. That's right, Darren. I do remember that. So thank you for sharing that with us again. Megorium says a podcast would be really cool. Absolutely, Megorium. It would. Just so much time in a day. That's what it really comes down to. But hopefully in time, as the business builds up and we're able to expand the team and start staffing out accordingly, then I would like to be in a position to do many more things to further educate and assist people and have programs available to help people as well with understanding the process even more. Matt Nelson says, set up a Google Voice phone number to forward to your phone for free and post it to receive calls on a podcast. Matt, hit me up offline. You got my information. Hit me offline about whatever you're talking about there, because I'm not tracking with you right now in the live stream 110 on that. So if you'd be so kind as to shoot me a direct email or whatever, and let me know what it is and send me the link that you're talking about. I'll take a closer look at it. Thank you for sharing that. Brian says, yeah, I love Dave Ramsey, but I didn't listen to him about buying a house. I lost $25,000 to $35,000 in opportunity cost over 2 to 3 years. I could have bought my house so much cheaper. That's right. And that's why I bring it up. I want to be very, very clear. I respect Dave Ramsey and what he does a lot. And I really appreciate what he does. It's just as it pertains to real estate that I believe it's out of touch based upon what I experienced, and what you just shared with us right now is out of touch with reality for the average American. And the opportunity cost there, you could have bought a house not only cheaper, but you would have already had that $25,000 to $35,000 in home equity in your pocket. Not to mention, 2 to 3 years ago, rates were lower than they are today. So your purchasing power would have been increased. You would have got more home for the dollar, and you would have all got it for less than going through the process now. So I'm glad you bring that up, because that's exactly why I say I love Dave Ramsey. I really do. But as it pertains to real estate, just out of touch, in my opinion. So anyways, when it comes to real estate, out of touch when it comes to real estate. Let me be clear. Don't misquote me, please. Okay. James Duffy says, born and raised in Vegas, the housing prices are ridiculous. I'm moving to Huntsville, Alabama, and the homes there are like $250K, where in Vegas they would be $450K. James, completely feel you there, buddy. You know, obviously I'm here in Las Vegas, Nevada, and I've watched these prices ascend and ascend and ascend, and now I'm watching them level. I'm watching them stabilize. But as they stabilize, it's just that, stabilized. So the prices that we're seeing today are likely to become the baseline after the next downturn in the market. It might be about anywhere between 3 and 12%, I'd say, higher than today's market prices whenever we get down to the next downturn. But the next downturn, just to be completely real with you, barring anything super stupid happening and being like a major global war or something, the prices of real estate realistically are not going to be going down like they did in 2008. That was a one-off. Whenever you really consider it, it was almost 90 years in between the last time that it happened to the real estate market to the time that it happened. The last time was the Great Depression of the 1930s. So when you look at it, not 90, but 80-ish years if you do the math there. All the same, it's important to realize that a normal correction in a market, a normal downturn in the market might constitute between 5 and 15% depreciating values when that occurs. At the current trend, at the current condition and pace, it doesn't seem like that's going to happen until around 2023, 2025 timeframe. Now, of course, it's hard to call the shot with 2024's side. All the same, it's just to be real when it does happen, what we're looking at for prices. I bring that up so that if you're moving to Huntsville, Alabama, James, hey, more power to you. Get your home now so that you can be comfortable. And if you need help finding a top agent there, hit me up directly and I'll help you get one, okay? Completely get where you're coming from. That's what I was talking about earlier in today's episode, where you got people moving to the South, Midwest, and certain other areas where real estate is much more affordable, given the one's financial situation, of course. So, Megorium, if I waited until my student loans were paid off, it'd be 6 years before I'd buy a house. Yeah, no kidding, Megorium, you got that right. And if you did that, then who knows where we're going to be in 6 years, right? Especially with rates and everything. So, Bryan, what's the LV rate? What's the LV rate for a finished square foot? It really depends, Bryan. You're talking about my house, you bought your house at $100 a square foot. It really depends on where you're at and the size of the house that you're looking for, and whether it's luxury, normal house, what have you. You know, there's a lot of, if you were going to ask me like a trend line number, it's probably about between $155 and $165 a square foot right now. Now, there are homes that I've shown that have been upwards of $215, $290 a square foot, depending on the community and the type of neighborhood it was. And there are certainly, you know, in the multi-million-dollar price points, over $1,000 a square foot, depending on the community and the house itself. All the same, if you're asking me a rough ballpark average right now, I tell you, if you know, just off the top of my head, I'd have to go to my website to check the exact numbers on this, but I would tell you that's probably about $155 to $165 a square foot on average right now. Just depends on the size of the home. It's a very interesting observation to be made on that. The bigger the home, normally the less the price per square foot. The smaller the home, the higher the price per square foot. It's because you still got all the same building materials that got to take the build out in a house. A 2-story is statistically cheaper than a 1-story, because a 1-story takes more materials, takes more land, and then, you know, I've made videos about that as well, and that's another one of those rabbit holes we can go down really quick, because it seems to defy logic. So, but it's very true. So it's important to note that. Anyways, Megorium, buy my house now. Push buy my house now. When the loans are paid off, then I'd be able to pay more on my mortgage. Yep. You're pushing to buy your house now. Smart move. She's sharing that, Megorium is sharing, is when the loans are paid off, then Megorium would be able to buy more, pay more on the mortgage and pay it off faster. Absolutely, Megorium. Smart decision. Matt Nelson, I don't have IG anymore. What's your email? My email's in the show more description, Matt. So hit me up directly. It's always in the show more description for reference. But yeah, hit me up. Matt Nelson says, wait, never mind. I got you on Messenger, Facebook. Okay, yeah, I'll shoot you a message later. Awesome, Matt. Thank you. Bryan, at least with the LV, California real estate is a lot cheaper versus my cousin's market. He lives in Vancouver, British Columbia, going rate of $1,000 to $1,100 a square foot. Yeah, so we don't see $1,000 to $1,100 a square foot until you start hitting the multi-million-dollar price point here in Vegas. So yeah, Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada, very, very expensive real estate up there. So completely feel them. And there's some other areas of the country and here in the United States that are pretty pricey as well. So that being said, we have done a fantastic job today of going on for about an hour. There's been a lot of engagement. In fact, so much so that we didn't even touch the comments that came in over the last week. Now, I know that you have things to do. I certainly have some things to do to get back on my schedule here in Las Vegas. I do want to say thank you so much for joining me today, and thank you so much for the wonderful engagement. I hope that you'll join us again next Wednesday at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. In the meantime, I want you to know that I'm wishing you and yours a lifetime full of love, wealth, abundance, and happiness. And please, be the reason that someone smiles today. We'll see you again soon. Enjoy a beautiful day.